I'm Gordon Willis. I'm a director of photography.
Okay. How did you become a director of photography?
Well, actually, I sort of stumbled into it because my family was in the business. My father was a makeup artist at Warner Brothers in Brooklyn during the Depression. So I was always around, hanging around. And I decided I wanted to be an actor early on when I was a kid. Lucky for me, I changed my mind. And then got interested in stagecraft, and then finally still work, and then I went into the Air Force, worked documentaries, came out, and got into the local in New York. And a very, very nice man who I met after I got in gave me my first job, which was like 2 days after I met him, and I didn't have any equipment, nothing. I showed up first day of work with a paper bag and a tape measure. And that's how I started, and so forth and so on after that.
How'd you get your first big break?
I got my first big break, again, from a very nice person who wanted to make a movie called End of the Road. And he'd been going through everybody's reels. And I met him, and we kind of, this group of avant-garde people took off and did what they felt like shooting this movie. But it was so unique, generally speaking, for mainstream movie making that I sort of got a lot of attention out of it. Not that I was trying to, but it worked out that way. So that's how I really got the start in motion picture work. Prior to that was commercials, industrials.
So I guess there's a lot of luck involved. Luck?
Yeah, I always, talking to film students, I always say, what do you do? How do you get a job? I say, it's a lot of luck involved. Right place, right time. Anything good that ever happened to me happened because of someone else giving me an opportunity. Always, every single time.
Let's think about the opening of this film, and then we can do the short version and the long version.
Yeah.
And that is, the question is, what is cinematography, and what does a cinematographer do?
What does a cinematographer do, or what is cinematography? I suppose my out-of-pocket answer would have to be, his or her job is to transpose the written word into visual storytelling.
Can you rephrase that one more time, please?
Yeah. My out-of-pocket answer for what a photographer does, what a cinematographer's job is to transpose the written word into visual storytelling. Should I do it again?
Let's be a little more personal, maybe we or I.
Right. My feeling about what a DP does or a cinematographer does is, my out-of-pocket answer on it is to transpose the written word into visual storytelling. Now, a longer version of what a cinematographer does is probably you're a visual psychiatrist. You're moving an audience around as you see fit at given times, painting pictures in the dark. And kind of a dream maker, give or take. A very short version of what a cinematographer does is I set lights. So you can pick any of those that make sense.
Those are good. And how do you decide how a film is going to look? What is style? Short version.
Short version of what style is, well, I'm not sure I have a short version of what style is, but style basically comes out of you. Generally speaking, there is no formula, although people want to know the formula. The formula is you. So style comes out of actually watching an actor do a scene, and you decide something. Style comes out of a process of the material many times, but it's very indiscriminate, at least I feel it's indiscriminate. It can come from almost any place in the structure of a movie. And as an example, I think it was like 20 minutes before I started shooting Godfather 1, I decided how it should look. It's, you watch rehearsals, you listen to people, you just stand there, and then some idea comes to you and say, that feels right. So it feels right for this. And, that's how I get to it. I don't know how other people get to it.
When you're prepping a movie, do you research? Do you look at things?
When I prep a movie, I do look at things. If it's a period movie, I'll look at things. Because, anybody's reference to something in the 1800s or the early 1900s, etc., the only way anybody knows what that looks like is they've seen pictures or they've seen paintings. So sometimes use that as a reference and pull something out of those photographs or those paintings and use that quality up on the screen. Because, as I said, it's the only reference anyone really has when they look at something. Yeah.
What is your, I guess, for lack of a better word, what's your philosophy of how you approach how things should look? Do you have one?
That's my philosophy about how things should look. I'm actually a minimalist. I like to take things out, not add things. So I spend the first week on a movie or first prep time, I think, taking things out. So I do. I think that simple is very elegant, and I find that people don't quite understand that. And I think that many movie makers are encumbered with complexity. They perceive complex as good, and I'm the opposite. I find that not adding but taking away is better, always. But it's like somebody's not working. They throw another sandbag in the boat because it's listing, and they keep throwing sandbag, and pretty the whole boat sinks. You don't put in more, you take away. Usually, when something doesn't work, it's because you're doing too much, or you've made the wrong choice. One of those two. So you have to sort of rethink it when it's not really working too well.
That's a great answer. Can you just do it one more time from the beginning? You just stumbled on the word minimalist.
Yes. Well, how I should decide something looks. Well, I'm a minimalist. I don't like adding. I like taking away. One of the big problems with art direction and things, or wardrobe is it's too much. Usually it's too much. So take everything away. So, and it's like when the boat is sinking or it's listing, they throw sandbags in the boat. You want to straighten it out. Pretty soon the whole boat sinks. So I like to take things away, not add things. I don't like complexity. Simplicity, elegance, better that way.
So how does that relate to lighting? You take lights away?
Yes, I take lights away. I actually, I don't. I suppose I have a reputation for not using a lot of light, but actually, on a lot of times I've used quite a bit of light. But I don't know, fit the punishment to the crime. I don't like. I'm not a formula thinker. I'll look at something, or think about something, and say, well, this is good for this. This is good for that. So one light bulb and a lamp might be good for something, but 29 space lights might be better for something else. So I do tend not to do. I don't get motion confused with accomplishment, and I think that happens a lot in the business. So I do what's necessary to convey the idea or the visual at that time.
You just said something really interesting. You don't do what emotion with?
I don't get motion confused with accomplishment. It's a big fault in the movie business. It's I think people fall in love with the process, and equipment, and the process is a means to an end. I mean, a camera's a tool, film's a tool. I'm a tool. The actor's a tool. The director's a tool. And the whole thing is to move that script onto the screen. The process bogs people down sometimes. So that's the reason I like to eliminate, not add. Get right to the heart of what has to be done.
So I'm jumping all over the place.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
This is really interesting.
That's fine.
Let's talk about the difference between then movies and commercials, where that might be something different.
Right. Actually, the truth about commercials, because actually I made a living on commercials for a long time, again, because of a lot of nice people, but I learned a lot about shooting via commercials, because there was so much technique in commercials and so much gear and so much stuff that you could draw on to learn things that I learned a lot. And the interesting part about older movies, you learn a lot from features watching 30s and 40s movies, was, they didn't get motion confused with the comments regarding the scene. A lot of people think a scene is dull if the camera's not moving. This is motion pictures, we must move. What makes a scene dull is what's the content of a scene. That's what makes it dull. If that's no good, you can move back and forth forever, and it won't help. So the earlier movies, 40s, I'll say 40s, some late 30s, they take a two-shot, the whole scene would play out in a two-shot, and they put a button on the end of it with a close-up or something, and you never took your eyes off the screen. The writing was good, the acting was good. So I learned a lot about cutting from earlier movies. Excess, what not to do, lack of complexity, blah, blah, blah. So the opposite happened in commercials. Technically, learned a lot out of commercials, but that's not the place to learn to shoot a movie. In fact, a lot of MTV, people try and shoot movies, and the process is what's important to them, not the content. So they get mixed up.
So it sounds like it's very important for cinematographers to know editing.
I think a cinematographer can't shoot well unless he knows how to edit. I mean, if you don't know how to cut, you really won't know how to shoot well. I've been accused of editing through lighting, and maybe I have, but I not consciously, but I do it. I have done it. I don't like shotgun movie making. I mean, I do like definition. If you need 2 cuts, fine. If you need 4, fine.
What is shotgun movie making?
Well, that's when
Start with shotgun movie making.
Yeah. What is shotgun movie making? That's like shotgun lighting, It's like, let's spray the entire room. Let's get every single cut we can think of, including the doorknobs. So there's no real structure in the thinking. It's just, let's do everything. Let's take every shot. Let's take a long shot, close-up, medium close-up, blah, 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 blah. And then turn it all over to an editor, and an editor makes the movie. That's what I call dump truck directing. And I don't particularly care for it. So I've been fortunate enough that most people I've worked with, you look at a scene and you say, well, what do we have to accomplish in the scene? Does it take 1 cut, 4 cuts? And that's what you do. You lay it out and you shoot those 4. Or you lay it out and you shoot 20 if that's what it takes. But not mindless machine gun shooting. I don't like it.
I can hear a little noise in there, Howard. I think there's some noise in there. Okay. Next question is, so I guess a cinematographer has to know when to argue.
A cinematographer does have to know when to argue. I mean, fight, actually, at times, This is not good advice for everyone. It's advice. You have to take your own cue from what to do when you're working with people. But I'm not indiscriminate, but I don't like living in a fool's paradise. So, yeah, I have argued about certain things to get them done properly. Yeah.
Storaro talks about sometimes you just have to say no.
Right. No is a very important word, very important. Yes is not a good word all the time. I mean, it doesn't get you more work. In fact, no gets you more work than yes, because anything works while you're shooting it. Nothing works in the screening room if it's no good. So what they said the day before, they can't remember when they get in the screening room. So if you said no to something bad and it turns out to be right in the screening room, they forget about the no the day before. But they never forget about the yes if it's no good. So anything works when you're shooting it. It doesn't apply in a screening room if it's no good. So no is important, yeah.
Let's go in tight, please, Brian. Let's get into the heart of this. And are you good, Ben?
Yeah, I just was going to lower this, and I grabbed a drawer.
We're going to talk about
Are you okay?
style.
Yeah, style.
Style. What is style, and what defines the look of a film?
What is style, and what defines the look of a film? I wish I had sort of like an out-of-the-pocket answer for that. Well, I do, but it's not something I want to just, it's not really right. Well, let me start off by answering part of it. The look of a film. I think I mentioned once that when I was thinking about The Godfather, both 1 and 2 at the time, it was about 20 minutes before we started the movie that I finally decided what it should look like. And the feeling of how a film should look really comes out of you. And I can't tell you why I decided that. I said, well, it should be kind of dirty and street and should be brassy yellow. And if somebody said, why did you decide that? I would have to say, I have no idea. It felt like it should be that way. And then the same problem happened on part 2, but you had a problem of turn of the century moving into 1958 and going back and forth all the time. So Francis said, Jesus, how the hell are we going to know where we are here, just story-wise? I said, why don't you just resort to using, the title, New York, blah, blah, thing. I said, that's stylish and it works. My problem was, we go from 1900 to 1958. You don't want to do something stupid like black and white here and then color there. I mean, it's intrusive. So what happened was the same color was applied throughout the entire movie, both 1 and 2, this kind of yellow thing. But the quality of the photography within the period work was different. So you went for very kind of soft, unfocused look on the period work, whereas the other work in the 50s became sharper and more definitive. But it wasn't so intrusive that you couldn't go back and forth and people would say, what's going on? You sort of move through the entire movie. But if you take another movie, I don't know, take Woody Allen, for instance, doing pictures with Woody. New York came up with Manhattan. He wanted to shoot Manhattan in black and white. I said, it's a great idea. Why don't we do it in scope, widescreen, black and white? I said, this is New York. Feels kind of good. And he sort of saw New York as a black and white city, and so did I. So the style, I perceive mostly what I do as romantic reality. So Manhattan was romantic reality, but also Godfather was a romantic reality. It's not real. People say, gee, that's so real. It's not real. It's what you select to shoot that makes the difference between what it looks like, what you select to shoot. It's very important. You can select to shoot something over there. You can select to shoot something over there. Those choices will make it look different. You'll have a different feeling emotionally on the screen with it. So, romantic reality for Manhattan. You can shoot Manhattan. I've shot movies there where it's an ugly place to be. You don't want that. You want it to be George Gershwin's. So your choices are all positive choices. You can make negative choices in another kind of movie. It's what you choose to do, actually.
Do you think there's a style that goes through all of your movies? Are you a romantic at heart, or all your movies romantic realism?
I'm a romantic at heart, although my wife would say that isn't true, but I am visually a romantic at heart. I mean, even a killing in a movie, I find there's a certain amount of romantic reality in it. I don't try and think that way. I mean, it's what I choose to do, or what light you choose to put on, or what you do. I can't explain why you do it because it's just something that you do. But I'd say, yeah, I'm probably romantic reality. It would be a good explanation of what I do. Even brutal movies,
'Cause it seems to me, even though a lot of our colleagues have maybe said no, they don't have a style that goes through all their movies, I would argue that yes, you do.
There is a definable style that's going through most of my movies. I mean, it's applied differently. I mean, I do a lot of the same things, but it's applied differently. And I mean, I don't mind saying that. It's and I don't. The trick is to integrate your visual decisions with the movie, with the story, and you can have both. I mean, you can have a good movie with good visuals. I mean, that's the best movie. Good content, good visual structure. Although I must tell you that you can have a very good story and it will work with bad photography. Whereas opposed, you can have, really, really, really good photography and a bad story, and it doesn't really make it work. So, but both together is important. Yeah.
So, do we want the cinematography to be subservient to the story?
I don't think the cinematography should be subservient to a story. I think that it's, in fact, the opposite is true, because I think you editorialize visually. And, I mean, my favorite thing in using light, for instance, I like relativity. I like light to dark, big to small. My favorite kind of thing is you have somebody standing by a window talking to somebody who's standing in the corner. And someone standing in the corner is in the dark. So you're cutting from the sky at the window, talking to this girl who's standing in the corner in the dark. And maybe at the end of the scene, she steps out of the dark, and you put a button on it, complete the scene with some close-up. That's good shooting. It's very hard to find people who have courage enough to shoot a scene that way. They'll say, well, we'll shoot it that way, but then let's shoot it where she's not standing in the dark. Well, I said, well, that's not an idea. I said, that's an option. I said, but it's not an idea. So I don't like to do that. So let's commit to an idea. So I enjoy relativity. I enjoy that kind of function.
So who needs to be gutsy? Is it the cinematographer or is it the director?
Cinematographer has to be gutsy regarding what decisions are made as far as light and dark, the relativity of big and small. Sometimes you got to get pushy in order to get the idea through. Making a decision about style or frame size or lighting, relativity is important to me, light and dark. And I like to use it a lot in movies. And transitionally, it's very good. So the problem with most people that you get involved with at first is fear. They're afraid to step past the point that they know is safe when you make a decision about shooting a scene within a room with two people that are doing this or doing that, and how you pluck it out. They'll want the option of seeing it this way as well as that way. There was one director I worked with, he says, what's my option? I said, there are no options. I said, 6 months from now, you'll have so many options in the editing room, you'll have forgotten the movie that you're shooting. So I don't like options. I like commitment. Did we answer enough of that?
That was great.
Okay.
So you show up in a dark set, an empty set. What goes through your head? How do you make those choices?
Well, the last thing on my mind is where the camera goes and what light should go on. It's the last thing on my mind. The first thing on my mind is, what's the scene about? You watch the actors block or work, rehearse. And then out of that, there's a decision about how many shots do you make in the scene? Go over that with the director. And then after that, how you like the scene. And that decision is really based on, as I said before, where the scene fits in the movie, what it's supposed to feel like, etc., etc. So it's the last decision, lighting.
Do you read the script a lot to go over all this?
I used to read the script. I'm a two-time reader, what I call a two-time reader. I read it first, and then I like the values in it or what it has to say or the feelings in it or whatever. Then I read it again for actually seeing what it really is. And then I used to have feelings about how it should be shot when I'd read it. And I stopped that. I'd have them, I'd bury them, because I hadn't talked to the director and I didn't know what his feelings were. So you don't want to come in with preconceived ideas, because he actually might have much better ideas than you do. So you want to hear what he has to say and what he feels like. And then then you might agree, you might not agree, and then you can shove everything you're thinking at him, and he can feed off of that, so it's, an exchange. So after that's all over, then the process of actually coming up with the goods happens while they rehearse or while you're on your feet standing where you're standing, blah, blah, blah. And then you make the decision.
Are most directors visual or not?
No, I found that most directors today are not visual. One of the bigger problems I think you have as a director of photography is I'll walk into a room or look at you or work at that, and I immediately transpose what I'm looking at in film terms. You know, there's film reality and there's reality. And film reality is not reality. And I found that a lot of directors can't transpose what they're looking at into film reality. It's like the big surprise in the screening. I didn't know it was going to look like that. You know, is this all we have? These 40 close-ups that we shot all night? You know, they don't really see what that is. You know, because they could save them a lot of time if they could just reduce what they're looking at into cutting terms or film terms. So I some do, but it's rare, really rare, actually.
So that's probably why a director needs a good cinematographer.
It helps if you're together and you're not stepping on each other's toes. You know, it's very helpful. Yeah.
What's the best way to work with a director? What's your ideal?
My ideal way, and by the way, this changed after a while, but I used to talk through a script, you know, page by page, scene by scene, so that I got everybody's thoughts, everybody meaning the director and my thoughts, and put him in. And then after working with certain people for a period of time, you sort of get used to each other, and then that process sort of got eliminated because we sort of got used to each other and got used to the story. So we either talk about it that morning on our feet and then boom, 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 boom. But the overall concept we usually talked about before the movie ever started, so that you got that in mind. You know what? You don't want to get off track on that. You don't want to shoot 7 movies at the same time, you know, because you're afraid of the movie that you're actually shooting. So let's do this, let's do that, let's do a little bit of this, let's do a little. So I rarely let anybody get off track. I push them straight ahead on the basic concept of what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, so we're wrapping up the section on style. Raimi says in Europe, in America, the studios are all over the cinematographers. In Europe, they trust the filmmakers to do a good job.
A good job. You know, I get a little pushy about that because I really see it one way. I don't really see it any other way, meaning I don't really like management telling anybody what to do. And I've been fortunate, actually. Most of the people I work with feel the same way. So we push ahead and do what we like to do, and for reasons that we feel are concrete in making the movie, usually worked out, actually, for the most part.
Good. And summary to wrap up style, maybe talking about art coming out of the craft or...
Style. Yeah, everybody wants a story about style, you know, how you get the formula. Well, there is no formula because style comes out of you. I mean, people like to hear that you did this, you did that, but really the reason you did it is for something that you were thinking. And actually it comes out of your life, what you've been exposed to, who you are, what you think, and that's what ends up on the screen. I'd like to say it doesn't work that way, but it does, really. It's not sitting at the bar at night coming up with an idea. That's not it.
That's good. We also talked about New York look, and Saul Negrin says there is a New York look. It's gritty. Roisman says it's sort of handheld documentary style. Negrin says it's these reflections, and you said it was sort of black and white.
Well, I perceive New York as a black and white city, but I think from the standpoint of what New York is visually on the screen, it's what you select to shoot. And it's, not to repeat myself, but romantic reality is how I perceive New York. And I could sort of perceive it in a Gershwin-esque way. But I don't think it's... You know what it is when you're in New York? Again, it's the choices you make. You know, it's what you decide to shoot. That's what New York looks like to you. You can have somebody come in and make choices about shooting in Chicago or shooting in New York or shooting in Miami, and they'll make choices which are redundant or the same old thing or, New York is kind of street. You want to make it street because that's it. It's concrete, So, but again, it's I don't think it's very hard to encapsulate what it is. I'll just go back to what anything is. It's the choice that you make to shoot it. But it's just street. But I don't want to be redundant. But it's the choice you make that makes New York look like New York. You don't have to do much to make it look good. You don't have to build anything visually to make New York interesting. Again, you choose to shoot this, you choose to shoot that. You put them together and you've got a good New York. So I don't know how to encapsulate it to make it right, but it again is a feeling, it's a feeling. It's what, as I said, what you choose to shoot. I mean, you can be very esoteric about it, but it's not it. I mean, it's just, well, I'll do this here and I'll do that there, and I'll shoot this and I won't shoot that but I guess I have to break that down and say it's the same with every movie. What you've chosen to do,
Why did you say you see New York as sort of a black and white town?
I do see it as a black and white city, but it doesn't because it's concrete. It's concrete and it's asphalt and it's tones of gray. Let me put it that way. It's tones of gray in a black and white city. So that's the way I see it. So it's very easy to hop on black and white, photographing black and white and applying it to New York because you are in shades of gray everywhere. So from that standpoint, it's kind of fun, to do it that way.
So the French guy says, in Europe we love them because they do everything. Not well, maybe, but everything.
I'm not sure. I mean, I sort of agree with something doing. I don't think anything does everything. I mean, I'm never. I mean, that's from a standpoint of economy. Something might do everything, but from the standpoint of applying a light, applying an idea, nothing does everything. I guess my favorite form of lighting is, put a 100-watt bulb in a lamp and turn it on. If it's close enough to the actor, great. I think that's really terrific. I like that. So turn off the key light a second. See, I like that. This is good for something like that. But this is really the best. No light at all. This is a good light. See, they didn't have this when I was actually shooting a couple of movies. I would shoot. You'd find the switch there. See? Even better. I love this stuff. Anyway, turn the light back on. So I'm very selective. I mean, I might walk into a room and do that, put a light bulb on. Or, this little unit's wonderful. I've hit the punishment to the crime as far as lighting's concerned. I mean, I've had people say, Jesus, he doesn't do anything. Well, that's not true. I'll do something, but it's just not a lot, maybe in one case. And other times, I've put up a lot of lighting. But again, it's what you're trying to do at the moment. What you fit the punishment to the crime, really, is what I feel about lighting. And also, what's it supposed to look like? What are you trying to achieve? All that kind of thing. I do like a lot of relativity in lighting. I think I mentioned light and dark in scenes. If you have a railroad flat, somebody's walking in and out of the apartment. There are 3 rooms to walk through. All 3 rooms are not going to look the same, in my opinion. One might be light, one might be dark, one might be this, one might be that. There's a dimension, which I think you have to create on the screen with light. It's not mysterious. It's just, in my opinion, common sense. I think if you're not afraid, I used to write a lot of people in Hollywood should have a T-shirt that says fear on it. If you're not afraid, you'll do the right thing. If you're not afraid to exercise what you feel about something, you'll do the right thing. I made it easy for a lot of people to do the right thing once I started shooting, because I broke through the you can't do that part. Yes, you can. Just do it. You know?
Let's talk about that. That's really interesting. How did you, of all people, break through? I mean, nobody else could.
Well, you know, I never did anything to be different, because there's a very thin line between different and lousy. I never did anything to be different. I just did what I liked, and I was fortunate enough to be with people who accepted that and enjoyed it, actually, and they were part of it. So I never did anything to be different. I just did it because I liked it. And it kind of caused a riot a couple of times at certain studios, and they were very upset. But I didn't. I said, wow, this is it, and continued. Well, that helped other people do things possibly, but a long time. It took them a long time before they would shoot with one light or no light or against a window or this or that. But it's something that I enjoy doing. I never think about it. I just think about applying it, but I never think about I can't do this or I can't, I don't.
What was it that you did that hadn't been, for students who probably don't know, what was it that you did differently?
Well, it was all, if you want to go through the premise that, let's take a feature motion picture a minute, because that's the easiest one to apply on, it was the Marx Brothers drama syndrome in Hollywood. When you shoot comedies, they have to be two-dimensional, flat, light, and it worked. It was fine. And if you shot a drama, then it had to be different. It could be, low-key, it could be this, it could be that. And in fact, there was some brilliant lighting in a lot of movies that were done in that period, the 30s and 40s, brilliant lighting. But there was a concept that it had to be that way. My concept is, does it work for this movie? I don't care whether they're saying something funny or, they're not saying something funny. Does it work for this movie? So I never had an overall feeling about, if it's a comedy, it should be this. If it's a drama, it should be that. It's just whatever the story is, do it. Whatever feels right, feels good. Do that.
If All the President's Men had been shot by someone else with a studio system, what would it have looked like?
How would All the President's Men look if Hollywood had photographed it in a general sense? They usually do, as opposed to me photographing it. I don't really know what the difference would be, except that I know that they wouldn't have used cool white fluorescence to light up the newsroom at Warner's, and I don't think they would have used the same kind of relativity, going from the newsroom down to the garage, for instance. I mean, I kept that full of fluorescence, greeny blue thing, for Deep Throat. And there was also a discussion at the time that we were shooting Hal Holbrook in Deep Throat, and my idea, and I should have done it and not discussed it, was that I think the first time we see Hal, I shouldn't see his face at all. I mean, nothing. And then progressively open him up a little bit as we went along on each minute. Well, actually, Alan Pakula, the director, began to have coronary attack when I said, let's just turn the light, no light, just backlight on him. So he didn't want to do that. We're going to have to wait a minute because this phone is...
So let's keep rolling?
It's going to ring 4 times or 5 times, I think. When we decided to do Deep Throat in the garage, I kept all this kind of green, bluey thing. But when we started getting closer on Hal Holbrook, I said to Alan Pakula, what we should do is just backlight him. Let's not use anything on his face. And actually went into cardiac arrest. That suggestion was a little bit too much for him. So I said, all right. I compromised and had a little bit of light around his eyes there the very first time. My thought would have been none for the first time, and then a little bit next time, that kind of thing. But, so, in my mind, it was kind of a compromise, but I couldn't really force the issue at that point. But actually what happened, everybody liked. But I don't think they would have used that kind of relativity if it had been done Hollywood style. It wouldn't have been green down there, for one thing. It would have, and I think they would have probably given how more light on his face from just it's a habit, to do it. But so in general terms, I don't think the same relativity would have been there. But I'm guessing at this point, I don't know.
At the risk of embarrassing you,
Yeah.
some film critics have said that you're probably the best cinematographer this country has ever produced, but yet it was outside of the Hollywood environment. Was that helpful?
What's helpful, I guess. I mean, I don't misunderstand this. I try not to pay attention to any of that, and I don't. And it didn't help me in Hollywood. I mean, there were plenty of people who wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot pole. They were very frightened of getting involved at that level. Regardless of what you could bring to the movie or not bring to the movie. But I just never thought I'm perfectly capable of thinking inside the box. But I never really did. I just thought about, as I said before, what I liked to do and what I thought was appropriate for the movie. I never really felt, oh, this girl is in the movie, we have to do this. This guy's in the movie, we have to do that. It was always an attack on the movie itself and then treating the gut of it as I saw fit. So, yeah, I think there were people that felt that way, and there were other people that felt, God almighty, I don't want to hire him. Look what will happen. So it was mixed emotions, actually.
So this is actually a good segue into sort of the end of this film, where we're summarizing what is it all about, and I think we sort of agree that it's all about the idea. It's the why, not the how, right?
Right. I have a lot of people as film students, or even people that have worked in the business, that they say, well, how did you do that? And I really don't. Why you do something is a lot more important than how you do it. What you do and why you do it. How is your craft? It's you have to learn that and you have to keep up on it, but it's like a paintbrush. You reach over and you grab it, and it enables you to transpose an idea that's in your head. And once you've got that, then you forget about it. But it's why you decide to do something that's really important. The how of it is not it's the sister of why, but it's not the most important part.
Now, at the risk of feeding you a line, I'd like to edit you before Storaro, who says it's the idea that's important.
Right. It's the idea that is important. It's why you do something as opposed to how you do something. What you do and why you do it.
All right, technique and technology, do they influence each other?
I think technique and technology influence it. They don't influence me, but they do tend to influence, the business. I mean, it's like pre-zoom lenses, and then zoom lenses came in, and people started designing shots for zoom lenses. The cranes, they start designing shots for cranes, This happens, they start designing shots. I am not a believer in that. I think what you do is design the movie, decide what you want to do, and then reach for the equipment you need, not the other way around. But I find a lot of people lost in the process of getting all this stuff together and finding a way to use it, which is a big mistake. I mean, I don't, if you don't need it, you only need one of this and two of those, then that's what you do. You don't start, biggest mistake is that people add equipment as opposed to removing equipment. And I'm a take-awayer. I don't really like, I absolutely take what I need, and it better work right, but I don't like everything. I just don't think it's necessary.
On the other hand, it sounds like you have to know the equipment and know what it is and what it does to be able to know when not to use it?
Right. Exactly. What you don't do half the time is really more important than what you do. That's absolutely true. So if I sort of like a walk and talk kind of thinker. That's the kind of movies, you walk and talk movies, And I think a scene works perfectly well, in a two-shot move along a sidewalk, if the scene works, I don't think you need coverage if the scene's working. I don't think you need a close-up of him and a close-up of her, plus the two-shot moving for a block and a half. You know, a lot of people think they do. A lot of people don't know if they do or not. A lot of people are not sure whether the whole scene works. So let's add some more stuff. If it doesn't do this, we'll get in the helicopter. That'll work. And, you know, it's like pulling up at the end of the movie. They walk away down the dirt road and the camera pulls up. Well, why are you doing that? They don't know. They saw it in another movie and it looked good there. You know, so this is one of the big problems. We influence each other, and sometimes it's good. You learn things from each other. Sometimes it's really bad. You know, it's wallpaper on top of wallpaper on top of more wallpaper. I don't like it.
So the more tools you have, the worse it gets sometimes.
The more tools, you know, less is more in my mind. I mean, you can have everything. I've seen people, you know, go out with a lot. You know, I've seen other people go out with very little. You know, it's who you are. I mean, what makes you feel better? You know, a lot of directors influence a lot of, you know, DPs. Make sure we do this. Make sure and they don't. You know, they don't know what they're going to do, and they want every single thing available. It's expensive too. You know?
But getting back to knowing your craft,
Yeah.
I guess that's not an excuse for a cinematographer not knowing what these things are and what they do.
Well, you can't have art without craft. It's like somebody says, "I have a great idea for a painting," and I said, "Can you paint?" He said, "No," and then your idea's no good. You know, so you can't have art without craft. I mean, you got to learn your craft. It's very important. You know, it's nothing really wavy or esoteric about that. You have to know how to paint, you know, in order, as I said before, to transpose an idea properly. You know, so there is no art without craft. Anybody who thinks that, you know, to have an idea and not be able to, boom, do it. And I've seen people work in this business for years who don't know how to do this. They don't know how to do that. So I think we all tend to reduce or expand things to a level that we understand. And it's human nature, but it's a very dangerous trait because directors will do that and then they'll work their way around something they don't understand, get it to where they do understand it, and do it improperly. And a lot of DPs will do the same thing. Not a good thing.
Okay, so Fred was saying he saw his crew more than his family. It's too bad, but that's the way it worked out.
I saw my family and I saw my crew not always on equal terms. Yes, you see your crew a lot more than you see your family at times. But the strange part about it is your crew becomes your family. And hopefully you all get along because you're there for extended periods of time. I think the trick is, if you're married to somebody who loves you, she'll be there when you're finally done because she has to run it. And I've been very fortunate at that level. She's always been there when I'm done. But it's an overall perspective that you have to keep, and you have to be married to somebody that understands it. And you have to understand it thoroughly. It's very easy to cut the boat adrift. You do get reality mixed up with fantasy when you're working in this business a lot. And it's very important that you redefine the difference every now and then. And I've been fortunate. I had a lot of good people that I worked with. And a lot of them actually were very good family people. But you have to be strong. There are a lot of women hunting in this business, and there are a lot of men hunting. You have to decide what it is you want and do that. You know, it's very tough, actually.
Let's talk a little more about this reality thing. That's quite interesting, about separating reality, film reality from real reality.
Yeah, I mean, you can separating reality from film reality. You know, there are people that never do it. They never separate it. I mean, I've known certain actors that have never separated it. You know, they're happiest in film reality. They're happiest being someone else, And they're not, if you ask them, I mean, I'm not sure they could really divide it anymore. You know? And a lot of people in the business are happier being in film reality than in reality. You know, when you finally decide to quit, and that's not there anymore, you know, a lot of people get in trouble mentally. They can't handle it, you know. Which, in fact, it was your job. But a lot of people, it's like Alice in Wonderland. You step through the looking glass, and you never come back. You know, it's like, wait a minute, you know, this is so great, you know. But it's not really great. It's something you have to back away from eventually. But there's a problem with it. I've seen people not be able to get back through the glass. They enjoy being in the movie. You know?
That's fascinating. What about stress? Obviously, when you make a lot of these decisions, when you argue, it must be pretty stressful. But sometimes art comes out of stress, right?
Yeah, there are people. Well, sometimes it does. Actually, there are directors who believe that the more chaos, the more creative thing. Truly, that doesn't happen. You know. It's like, I don't like chaos. I mean, I don't like any of that. I like quiet, definitive, you know, decisions and thinking to get everything done properly. But there is a certain amount of stress. I was a carrier of stress more than I was stressed out, because I caused a lot of people to do certain things that, they didn't want to do. And I used to fight to get it done, you know. So, but it's exhausting, I must say. After 14 hours a day of doing it, it's very tiring. And you come home, you have 8 or 9 drinks before dinner to relax, and not a good habit. So, you know, it does take its toll if you really let it dig in.
So, were you the one who would wake up at 3 a.m. worrying about, oh my God, was it too dark, or is it the director who's the studio exec who's waking up at 3?
Oh, definitely the executive.
Sorry, I jumped on your line.
The studio executive is the first one to wake up and think it's too dark. I had really on Godfather 1, where we start in this dark hole of this guy talking to Brando. You know, it was huge flack coming, you know, from Paramount, you know, huge. It even made Francis nervous. But I said, no, just hang in there. It's going to be okay, you know. And to their credit, they did. But it used to be the studio that got that way, and still is to a degree, I think. Directors, if you know them, they don't get too nervous anymore. And then when I first started shooting, it was the drive-in syndrome, you know. They'll never see this in the drive-in. I said, nobody in the drive-in is watching the movie anyway. I said, that's silly. You get these wires, you know, you're in the middle of nowhere, and you get this telegram. They'll never see this in the drive-in. So I sort of ignored that, too, you know. But it's fear, again, you know. Fear. Also, they'd see, like, 2 days of shooting in a dark hallway with guns going off and stuff, and you really didn't see much except what you had to see in the cut. See, they'd see yards of this stuff. And then they say, well, we're not seeing anything. Well, it's a scene in the hallway with a long guy. I said, well, you know, the scene after that, this, there, the scene. But their immediate response is, they don't know how to cut it. Their immediate response is, it's dark. And I even had a response, it's too light. I was shooting a film with Hal Ashby where we were doing this relative thing about light and dark, and these people living this way and these people living that way. And the first complaint is it's too light. That was, you know, I've never had that complaint before. I had it there. So it's understandable when something is isolated in one piece. It's very hard to know how to look at dailies. I mean, even people who know better will look at it and say, you know, what's this for? This is not this is not that. You got to put together, they'll understand it a lot quicker.
Where are we going from here as cinematographers?
Well, where we're going from here as cinematographers, I think, is somewhat complicated, but I don't see it that way. I see it as kind of, we're approaching, you know, with another medium, another way of recording, you know, another medium. But it's actually, it doesn't eliminate anything. I mean, it doesn't eliminate thinking. You know, you still have to structure. You still have to come up with content. You still have to light. You still have to record. You still have to put sets together. You still have to. So, because somebody can pick up a digital camera, which I often do, and go from the bathroom to the kitchen with it, that's you know, that's not it. So, and there are a few directors who've gotten lost in that, by the way. You know, oh look, I can get under the chair. You know, I can do this. I can do that. Well, yeah, I suppose so, but it doesn't replace thinking. So I just see it as another medium to record with. It could be toilet paper. I don't really care. You know, I mean, it's something else that goes. It's not the idea. It's how you apply it. It's another camera and another recording medium. So I think it's going to be here, and I think it will replace film. I mean, you have to be in a fool's paradise to think that it won't happen. But I don't see it as a negative thing. I see it just as another way of telling a story.
What is a cinematographer?
A cinematographer is a visual psychiatrist, moving the audience through a movie from here to there to there to here, making them think the way you want to think, painting pictures in the dark. A dreamer, so to speak. A cinematographer is somebody who transposes the written word into visual storytelling. A cinematographer is somebody who sets lights.
And let's talk about lights.
Generally, what I'm accused of is not using enough light. So you want to turn that off? Yeah. See, isn't that better? I like that a lot. And then there's this little thing, which I think this is what my choice would probably be any given part of the day. I love this. Also, it doesn't take a lot of trucks to move it around. I like that a lot. See, isn't that better now? Off, everything off. Everything on. I love this. Okay, you can turn the key back on now. See, that makes everybody more comfortable now that that's on. We'll put them both on. That's good. Okay, turn the light off again.
Could you use that overhead?
I could use this overhead. Are you saying this would be my first choice? Like this? Probably.